I want to start our writing lesson today by thinking about this question. What do I remember? We have learned a lot about great narrative writing and what writers do to make a great narrative story. I want you to think back through all the things you've learned, and I want you to say 3 things across your fingers of what you have learned about good narrative writing. Pause the video, say the 3 things you've learned, and then push play again. Did you pause and say the 3 things that you remember about good writing? Here are some of the things that I thought of. Maybe it's the same thing that you did. I write about something that is close to my heart. I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I hook my reader to get them interested in my story. I use action, I use thoughts, and I use feelings. Those are all things that we've talked about during our lessons together. Did you say the same thing I did? Great. Let's learn something new today. When we get to the end of our writing, we want to wrap it all up. We want to end it with a bang so our readers are left thinking, wow, what a great story. Here's our learning target for today. I can provide a sense of closure for a narrative story by reminding the reader of the topic of the story in several different ways. I want you to be able to close up your story today in a way that makes your reader saying, wow. I want you to think for a moment about some of the stories we've read together, like Hooray for Wadney Wat, or Teacher's Pets, or Henry and Mudge. When the authors ended those stories, they didn't just stop and say the end, but they wrapped it up in a way that helped us know the story was over. They gave it what's called a sense of closure. That means it has a feeling that the story is closed. We as readers knew that the story had wrapped up, that it was over, and that the story was ending. Today I'm going to teach you 2 ways that you can wrap up your story so that your story can have a sense of closure and leave your readers feeling like the story ended in a good way. The first way that I'm going to teach you is called revisit your introduction. What that means is you go back to your hook or your introduction and you have your ending connect to that by using some of the same words or ideas. The other way we're going to learn today is to tell your feelings. That means you think about the story as a whole and how you feel about the story, and you share that with your readers. Let me show you how to do this using one of my stories. Today I'm going to revisit the story that I told about going and collecting seashells with my friend Kelly. I'm going to see if I can create a wrap-it-up conclusion that gives the story a sense of closure. I'm going to try both of the ways we just talked about to see which one I like best. So remember, the first one we talked about was to revisit the introduction, to go back and read the hook and see if I can come up with an ending that connects it by using the same ideas or words. So here was my hook. One hot day last summer, I headed to Indian Rocks Beach to go looking for shells. So some of the words or ideas that I might use in my connected ending is maybe I'm going to talk about shelling, going to look for shells, and it was one hot day last summer, so I might use those words again. Here's the conclusion, the ending that I came up with that connected to my introduction. That day I spent shelling. There's my connection. See how I used one hot day in the introduction and I used that day in my conclusion? That day I went shelling on the beach was one of the best days of my summer vacation. So I used the word day again. I used a form of the word shells by using shelling, and I connected back that that was a day that I went shelling. So that's how I revisited my introduction to help me wrap up my story. Now I'm going to try it by using the other way we talked about. Tell your feelings. I want to share with my readers about how I felt about the day that I went seashell collecting. So here's what I came up with. I had a delightful day, spending time scooping up sand and looking for perfect summer shells. So I told my readers how I felt about the day. I used I had a delightful day and then told them what I did. That's how I wrapped it up, telling my feelings. Now you're going to have a chance to practice creating an ending that wraps up one of my stories. Do you remember the story that I told about going swinging with my friend Melissa? Well, here's the hook that I decided to use for that story. Have you ever gone swinging with a friend? I have. One day last fall, I had the best time swinging with my friend Melissa. I want you to create an ending for that story that wraps it up. Maybe you're going to revisit that introduction I just read to you and create an ending that shares some of the same ideas or connects some of the words. Or maybe you're going to tell my feelings and create an ending that shares my feelings. Just so you know, it was the best day ever. I really had a great time. That might help. Okay, come up with an ending that wraps up my story and then move to the next near punch slide to share your idea.